Okay, you've made it to lesson three. Lesson three is all about communications technologies, transportation, and the media. Let's get into it. So, you have talked about different factors that have contributed to contemporary economic globalization. So, these are different things that have made the world become as economically globalized as it is today. Well, in lesson one, we talked about the foundations, right? We talked about the UN, we talked about Bretton Woods, we talked about World Bank, IMF. And then we also talked yesterday, or in the last lesson, about some other things that have contributed to the economically globalized world we live in today, right? Like the WTO is a big deal. We talked about the G7. We talked about the G20. These are other institutions that make world trade and economic globalization happen. Well, today we're going to add to that. We're going to talk about how transportation technology has influenced economic globalization and how communication technology has influenced economic globalization and how the media has also influenced economic globalization. Okay, so there we go. So in class, we talked about different types of communications technologies and how they've improved over the past years. Over the past 100 years, the ways that we communicate with each other have changed dramatically, right? We now have computers, we now have phones, we have smartphones, we now have satellites, orbiting the planet at all times. And these things have allowed people to connect with each other more through economic globalization. Okay, so here are the things we wrote down in class. So this is your answer to the first question about how economic globalization has been influenced by communication technology. So one possible answer that we talked about in class was trading stocks, right? Buying stocks in different companies and hoping that your stocks will grow so you can make more money. Well, it's easier to have more people do that. More people have access to the stock market today than they did before. And people have access to the global stock market using communications technologies. And also, the improvements to communication technology have allowed for new types of companies to be created, like Amazon or AliExpress, Alibaba, which allow you to shop online. You don't even need to go to a store anymore. And this has caused more economic globalization, more international trade. Okay, next we have transportation technologies. So think about how transportation technologies have improved during this third round of globalization. Boats, which transport goods, are much bigger and much safer and much faster and can carry more cargo than they could before. Airplanes, right? People can now travel in the air. That connects markets to each other. That allows countries to be connected to each other, businesses to become transnational, whereas they couldn't before. And so transportation technology have allowed for goods to be shipped all over the world quickly and cheaply, which was not always the case in the past. Okay. Another concept that you need to know about is containerization. If you look at these images, you're going to see that there are some shipping containers. Toward the end of World War II, countries decided that they were going to standardize the size of shipping containers, which means that countries around the world decided that it would be easier and more efficient for world trade if every country started using the same types of shipping containers and the same size of shipping containers. That way, they can easily be taken off of boats and put onto transport trucks, trailers, and onto trains and things like that. And so containerization has allowed for easier and cheaper and more reliable free trade between countries and has made the world more economically globalized. So in today's world, there are about 17 million of these shipping containers, and about 90% of the stuff that you can buy, right, the stuff that you've purchased, at one point in time, it was inside one of these shipping containers. So there's no way we would have the same access to the same goods that we have today if it wasn't for containerization. Okay, so if you are not in class, you're going to want to grab one of these maps from me next time you're in class because you're going to need to complete the free trade map activity, the global import and export map activity. So for that, you'll need to go to this website. The link to this website is in today's D2L instructions. So you go in there and you can use the website to find out which countries import from which countries and which countries export from which countries. So you're going to need to draw arrows on your map and just follow the activities that we did in class. And then that is going to be handed in as part of your unit notes before the Unit 3 test. Okay, take a look at these container ports, right? So these are the biggest shipping ports in the world. So the bigger the circle, the bigger the port. So if you take a look at East Asia and South Asia here, that's where we find some of the biggest ports, some of the biggest places where shipping containers are loaded up onto big boats, because these are some countries over here in East Asia which export a lot of products, okay, which is pretty cool. But what's not cool is the hidden cost behind this cheap transportation. We are all paying the cost of this cheap transportation because of the amount of fuel that these boats take. These are enormous boats traveling across the ocean, and they use up a lot of fuel. And so that emits greenhouse gases, which contribute to climate change. So about 20% of greenhouse gas emissions in the world, they come from the transportation of goods. And that's boats, that's planes, that's trains, that's trucks. So globalization means that products and goods are being transported much, much further than they used to. And we have access to more stuff from other parts of the world, but that comes at a cost, right? That means that we are emitting more carbon. And so globalization has caused more climate change. Okay, next we talk about the media. The question that you need to answer here is, how has the media contributed to economic globalization? Well, one way in which it has done that has been through consumerism, right? So this is the answer you can write down. The media contributes to economic globalization by running advertisements. All right, so think about every time you watch a YouTube video, or think about any time you scroll through Instagram. You are always being exposed to advertisements. And advertisements, they're always trying to get you to do the same thing, and that is to buy more stuff, right? So the media has contributed to this culture that we have, this culture of trying to seek our happiness and satisfaction in life by buying physical products, hoping that that will make us happy. Okay, and it's also supported through a lot of the world's art, right? So one form of art is music, right? And one song that was popular a few years ago promoted this idea of consumerism through these lyrics. I see it, I like it, I want it, I got it. And that is often the message behind a lot of our pop culture, is this idea that you want to make money and then you want to buy stuff. And then once you buy a lot of stuff, then you're going to be happy. And that's consumerism, right? It is the interest and desire to acquire many consumer goods, right? So Black Friday, think about Black Friday, how people, they become very enthusiastic, let's say, over getting products at a cheap price, at a low price. And sometimes that leads to people, fighting in the stores. That's consumerism, right? People are trying to seek their satisfaction and happiness through the purchase of products. Okay, next we talk about transnational corporations. All right, so in case you forgot, these are just businesses or companies that operate in countries around the world. Okay, so how have transnational corporations contributed to more economic globalization? Well, you can write this down. TNCs, or transnational corporations, they contribute to economic globalization because they produce huge amounts of goods and they create many imports and exports. So they have made more free trade happen, right? Transnational corporations, they want trade liberalization so that they can have their products made in faraway countries, and then also so that they can sell their products in faraway countries, right? So they have made for more economic globalization. Okay, so that's led to businesses becoming very, very big. For example, Altria is the name of a company. They control more money than the entire country of New Zealand. Or Yahoo, an internet company, they control more money than Mongolia. Toyota, car company, they've got more money than the country of Norway, right? So we've allowed corporations to become very, very big, and with money comes power, right? These corporations, they've got often a lot of power in national governments, federal governments. Okay, and many of these transnational corporations, they also have something called subsidiaries, right? So in class, I talked about the example of Time Warner, right? So Time Warner, they own a lot of smaller companies like Time Incorporated, Sports Illustrated, Time Magazine, Warner Brothers, HBO, IPC, Grupo, which is some Spanish magazines, CNN. These are all subsidiaries of a bigger company called Time Warner. So subsidiaries, these are smaller companies that are owned and controlled by the big parent company, which is usually a big corporation. And in today's world, we see more of this happening. Okay, so the last activity you needed to do for this lesson is to use the internet, find out what is the name of the parent company of some of these companies that you might know, right? So Instagram, what's the name of the parent company of this subsidiary? Same with YouTube. All right, same with Jordan, right? Real Canadian Superstore, Tim Hortons, Doritos. These are just subsidiaries. Find out who the parent company is for each of these products or for each of these companies. Okay, right on. So that's what you need to do for lesson 3. I hope you learned a couple things, and I'll see you in class.